like to thank everybody for coming, and it's been an interesting 2 months vacation for me, and here we are. So it's all good.
Interesting is the right word?
Yeah, so I got my back cut.
How is your back?
Yeah, and also I did a, has anybody ever hiked on South Mountain off of 19th Avenue? Off the Pyramid Trail?
Yeah.
Yes? Okay.
Every day.
So you go up to the right, you know what I mean? Okay, so I was coming down, this is like the 1st of June. And there was this group of 15 gray hairs in front of me. I thought, screw you, I'm going ahead of you. What happened about 2 minutes afterwards, I caught a rock. And I did a nosedive, black and blue. Blood all over the place. So that's been my 2 months.
Oh, man.
It's okay, but I mean, it's like, I'm still, even though I'm not as competitive as I used to be, I'm still competitive. And back in the day when we were hiking with the Sierra Singles, there was a former Secret Service guy that was part of the group. And he was part of the Clinton entourage as a Secret Service guy. So we had a saying, lead, follow, or get the F out of the way. Because we were leading the hikes. So I mean, that was what I'm saying is that was my aggressiveness and competitiveness at the time. That's been tempered a little bit, but it's just who I am. So anyway.
So you're older and wiser.
Which one, I don't know. What about you, Ed? Are you older or are you wiser?
Did the gray hairs you passed up, did they stop and help you while you were bleeding?
Yes.
They did.
Yes.
Because when you get older, your skin gets real thin, so I'm bleeding all over the place. And they're concerned I had a concussion. So they stopped and they put stuff in here. I thought, I gotta get out of here. This is too embarrassing. Because I was cocky before that.
The Phoenix Fire Department didn't come and stay?
No,
Okay.
it wasn't needed. So,
But
and
did you
then-
try to sell them a note while they were there?
And then for my pre-op interview, they said if they had any falls recently, and I said no. So anyway, everything is changing. So, you know, back in January, I started with this slide, you know, the picture of the Swiss cheese, and the cheese keeps moving, and obviously the markets keeps moving. Who was I talking to? We were talking about the marketplace, you and I, remember?
Right.
So last September, the market did start slowing. So Rodney and I, we were at the same as RIA meeting in, was it May? Is that when
Could have been one of them.
I think it was May. So the Crawford report, Tina was speaking on stage. She said, yeah, the market was going south, and then all of a sudden in April, it took a U-turn north. It's like, really?
Major U-turn.
Major U-turn north. Yeah. So in other words, the cheese keeps moving, and then same thing in the note business. The inventory's been really light for the box that I've been working in, and all of a sudden, it's opened up. So what does that do? It gives you energy. Or talking to Greg, you know, when you don't have something in front of you that you can really sink your teeth into, it's like, yeah, what are you gonna do? So anyway, here we are. So this doesn't change at all. We all know where the economy is or where it isn't, but there's nothing safe out there. And I show this slide every time, but no matter who you're working with, you gotta figure there's always gotta have a back door, or you gotta allow for that back door equity. And we were talking about loan value and everything too, right? You gotta buy, I don't care what it is, where you've got a big back end, so if things change, you can maneuver. You didn't buy with any back end, did you, Ed? You knew it was gonna be there.
We know it was gonna be there.
Yeah, because you were buying so low. And also the same thing here, don't believe anything I say, don't believe anything Russ says, or Rodney says. Do your own homework, check with your advisors for whatever, you know, for wherever you are. Renee doesn't believe me at all. I've shown this slide before in terms of cycles or whatever. So the net, only because we're filming now, and you'll cut that out. That's Shannon, my assistant. But I've been at this for a long time. In the next slide, you'll see, well, I'll tell you what it says. But, and net is, I've been at this game for a long time, whether it be building, developing, brokerage, whatever. I'm not going to go into all the detail, but it's not my first rodeo. This is what I'm talking about. If you can, maybe if you can't relate to that, maybe you can relate to that. In other words, good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgment. Can you relate to that, Rick?
Yep.
Yep. What about your dad? So again, market conditions, who moved my cheese. It's all about learning and staying up in tune with what's going on, what's changing, and you can't rely on anything to be where it's gonna be. You gotta stay up with the times.
Do people know that that's actually a book?
It is a book.
I know.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
An entire book.
It's a real skinny book,
Yeah, you can read it in about 15 minutes, actually.
and that's being a slow reader.
Yeah.
I can send you over the audiobook if you want it.
You
But
could
it's a
probably
great
just
book.
speak it, you could speak it to us, it probably.
Yeah.
It's very short.
Yeah, yeah. But things keep changing. Or just like now, you got Zillow, you got Open Door, you got Purple Bricks, you got OfferPad. What else is there?
Homey?
Huh?
Is Homey one of them?
Homey? Yeah.
Isn't Amazon getting into this?
Amazon's getting into
Amazon's
it, yep.
into it. So again, the cheese is moving. You just gotta move with the times. So to that point, there's several events for education that I highly recommend to you. How many of you have been to Noteworthy before? That's typically well, they used to have it 2 times a year, now it's 1 time a year. The next one's gonna be in Scottsdale in September. I'm not sure about the attendance. I know 2 of the speakers that'll be there, right, Russ?
Yeah.
It's a great event. They used to have a lot of upsell, they've cut that out. So it's all education now. And it's great
Yeah,
networking.
Nice.
For sure.
Yeah. Note Expo is coming up in November in Dallas. That's Eddie Speed's event, but there's gonna be 600 people there. That's a great event, and I'd highly recommend going. Are you gonna be at that one?
Yeah, I'll be there.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then Paper Source, I know you guys have been there, right? So Paper Source is in Vegas, and it's gonna be next April, the end of April. It's a great networking event too, geared to notes. But the key is to get your contacts. Let me give you a story. There's a friend of mine, I know him through note school. I'll keep his name out of it or where he lives. He said, "Where are you getting these notes? Can you tell me where you're getting them?" No. Why not? Well, let me see, Joe. How many events have you been to of any of these? None. Did you go to DC for the fly-in for Dodd-Frank? No. So you want me to just give you my sources? Yes. So my point is, there's a lot of education, there's a lot of networking, sources to find notes at these events, not to mention this one here. Oh, by the way, how do you like our new logo?
Love it.
Shannon did that. Woo!
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
So this is on that, you know this site, John. This is that same 19th Avenue. So about 2 years, oh yeah, with the cloud zone.
yeah.
Yeah. Yes. So I was hiking there, and I'm looking over, I'm seeing these clouds. And there's this guy with an iPhone. I said, "Can you get a picture of that, and email it to me?" I just loved it. But the metaphors that are tied to this. But if you think about it, you want to stay above the clouds, but you also want to know what's below the clouds. So what's any different with anything we do in investing? You want to do your due diligence. So we're keying this meeting to folks that might have been coming to these meetings before, looked at notes and not done anything, or maybe folks that have been doing it for a while and they want to get brushed up on different topics. So we're going to be talking about what's below the clouds without having to get stuck in the clouds. So where does a new note investor start? First off, it's like when they shoot a movie, they shoot the last scene first because they have a target, what they're aiming for. So from your perspective, are you going to be an active investor or passive? Do you want to work the product or you just want to get cash flow? And there's a difference, because if you're working it, you're going to get the higher returns. If you're passive, you're going to get lower returns. An example is Ohio is changing their laws on contract for deeds, new ones. So Russ is an RMLO, he's going to speak to that. And RMLO means Registered Mortgage Loan Originator, right? Okay.
Nice.
So they're gutting that law, or they're gutting the contract for deed, in that I sell Rodney a property. Contract for deed, land contract. I'm still on title. Rodney has a right to own the property. Typically, though, I shove everything on Rodney. He's going to pay the taxes, he's going to take care of the maintenance and all the repairs and everything like that. And I'm going to get a good interest rate, typically 10% or so. So Ohio's saying that's abusive. So so you can still do a contract for deed, but you, the seller, are gonna be responsible for taking care of all that stuff. Oh, by the way, you can't charge that interest rate. So it's like, why do you wanna do it? So from that perspective, that's gonna be coming to the other states, I'm sure, down the road. We're transitioning contract for deeds into either mortgages or notes or deed of trust and notes, just to stay ahead of the curve. So, but that's part of being active or passive. And of course, when you transition that note becomes a lot more valuable. Another question, performing or non-performing? Non-performing, you really got to do a lot of workout. Renee, Shondar, what does he do when he's doing a workout? Talk about that.
Well, it's a long process, but he starts off with, the welcome letter and everything else. Tries to work things out, and if he doesn't after about the third or fourth contact, some cases they're in bankruptcy, so you can't contact them anyway. Then usually getting something into foreclosure wakes them up.
Right.
And he's actually been doing a lot of foreclosures lately.
Okay.
But
he's what you'd call a real active investor.
yeah, and I mean, Shondor's wicked smart.
Right.
I mean, he's a Fulbright scholar and everything else, but he knows probably more real estate law than most lawyers do in just about every state.
Right.
So, but I mean, he does a great business. He has like 4 or 5 people helping him out. But again, he gets into the weeds where most people don't want to get.
Right. Right. Which is your non-performing or performing. Now, sometimes this here can go south. It happens. Do I like to work those? No. Will I? If I have to, yes. So it's a matter of risk versus reward. So where this is leading up to, as you'll see, if you're taking the risk, you're going to get a higher reward. Your reward is less if you're not taking the risk. Does that make sense? Josh, does that make sense to you? Okay. So, and also, if you're looking at these, non-performing is money later. Performing is money now. Non-performing could be longer term or shorter term, depending upon the workout. Performing could be long drawn out. So here's an example. The gentleman that responded to one of my last emails about a product that I had for sale, one of notes. And he said, I used to just go for yield. He was drunk on yield. He said, but now I backed my expectations down. I'm looking more for investment to value and loan to value versus the return. I said, great, I've got something that worked that way. So his girlfriend, wife is, I guess can't work anymore. And he said, well, so she's got 75 grand to spend. Okay, so take a look at these. Well, the interest rate is not high enough. The loan to value was 25, 35%, investment to value, really, really strong product. Oh, I want to get a 15% yield. Well, dude, it ain't gonna be there for that, because she doesn't know anything about the business, but she still wants that. So it's a matter of coming to terms with all that too. So if they were all maybe 75 or 100-month amortization, she wants 200 months. So it's like, okay, we'll see. So I love this stuff. Hope for the best while planning for the worst. That's what due diligence is all about. You think you're here, but stuff can hit the fan. And basically just setting yourself up so that you always have a backup plan. Because if the payer defaults, and they can and will, you gotta work through it. Or John bought a note, John and Margaret bought a note for me. And how many times have we made this call to these people?
We've had to initiate contact with them 5, 6 times.
But they've always come through.
Yeah, they did.
And so.
The man likes to work the system.
Right, right. In this particular case, it was with the insurance. The docs call for him to have an insurance policy, right?
Yes.
And for whatever the reason, we get these messages, insurance is canceled, this and that or whatever, or he didn't pay the sewer bill, or whatever the case might be. So to that point, we had to jump in and make sure it would happen. But it's just a matter of being able to work it right here. So today, and as all this stuff comes about, and I think you guys being real estate investors, you can look at it this way. Would you agree that there's maybe not a lot of inventory out there now? What are you and your dad seeing? As far as the amount of inventory now compared to 3 years ago?
Yeah, it's getting harder to capitalize on it that's out there.
Right, right. So to that point, if you.
Greater saturation.
Exactly.
There may be the same amount of stuff, but all of a sudden there's a lot more people
Right.
playing for it.
Right, right, and the big players like we
Right.
talked about. Right. What have you found in Kansas City in that?
It's interesting, there's a lot of investors looking for properties in Kansas City, Missouri.
Right. And that's around the country, that's just the way the model's working. But well, also, to that point, if you don't have a lot of deals, that means money that was going into those deals is just sitting on the sideline. So if it's sitting on the sideline, how much is it making?
Not much.
Zero. So therefore, if you look at supply and demand, if the money's sitting on the sideline, are you better off just to invest that into an asset that's gonna return a guaranteed amount of money, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10%, versus going for the big hit, 12, 13, 14, 15% with points and whatever else. Again, it's a mindset. But like Zillow, they're coming to town, and they, I don't know if you read this, they said they are willing to make zero money right now with what they're buying. Zero.
And they're successful in doing it.
But Ed, for the moment, yeah, for the moment, but it's gonna catch them. If the market, there is a market shift, but when the market was slowing down between September and April, if you look in the MLS, Open Door and OfferPad had a ton of inventory out there. It's not getting any, because they make it on the turn, on the transaction. If they don't get the transactional money, they're not making any money. But yet they still gotta pay their investors whatever the expected rate of return is. So, Ed, you think we're in a similar age bracket, I'll just leave it at that. But you've ever heard of Ken Fisher?
Yeah.
Okay, so he said that if you look at investing, the best approach to grow your 401ks is with active, passive, or a little of both. Would you agree with that? Okay. And if you look at Jack Bogle, Vanguard, passive investing is a great invention, is the greatest invention since the history of modern finance. Passively, there's always money coming in, IRA money. There's a ton of IRA money sitting out there right now. So conventionally, it's been updated, be passive, be active, but be proactive and not reactive. So what's your goal? And again, this is from a new perspective, a new investor or an existing investor. Are you in for cash flow or wealth accumulation? But again, it's beginning with the end in mind. So let's look at it this way. Where do you line up in here? And I'm not gonna read these, but you can see as well as I can. Passive, you don't have to know that much. You look at some basic information and you say, I'm good to go. You fund it and you receive the payments. Active, you source it, you review the collateral, you verify the valuation, due diligence, the attorneys, code enforcement. I'm gonna get into a code enforcement issue down the road here, and then you fund. There's a difference, but where do you line up in this whole process? And then you receive the payments. So we just bought 10 assets, and to that point, Lori, I can get you a copy of that if you want.
Yeah, I wanted the other copy of the slide of all the
Okay,
conventions.
I can do that, I can do that. So, we bought 10 notes, and they were serviced at 2 or 3 different places. And I didn't want to leave them at those servicing companies just because I didn't care for their track record. As an active investor, so this is going back to beginning of June, I have not gotten one payment yet because of the transition from servicer A to servicer B. Am I gonna get the money? Yes, I've gotta monitor that. But as an active investor, I've gotta do all that. Also, as an active investor, typically in these, the insurances aren't there. So I have to contact every single borrower. The good news is I'm creating a relationship with these folks on the phone. And so if something goes south later, it's good. But every single one, I've had to work the insurance package, whether it be forced place or getting a new declaration page or whatever, to make sure that that was a saleable box, that my investor, myself, was covered in the event that something happened that yours was one of them. But it's there, it's all good. But again, where are you in this whole equation?
So the previous servicer was not doing the insurance work?
Yes and no. If they have forced place, the moment that note is sold, we have to put a new forced placing policy in.
Okay.
Okay, so like if Lori bought a note, and if I put forced place on before she bought, and then I sold to her, that policy's canceled.
I want to define your term, forced place.
Forced place is, it's different than State Farm or whatever, it's just a risk policy, it's covering me as a lender,
Okay.
okay? It's very limited, it only covers us. Now, there's a note in Columbus, it's a duplex, and it's worth 60 grand. The note's, unpaid balance is 25. The payer said, well, I want to cover it for 60. So they're going to pay the additional to make that happen. And we're going to set up escrows monthly. And I had to do some advancing on that, but again, it's an active versus passive type scenario. Now, some of them had a policy, and I had to change a declaration page to name Capstone as a lost payee. And Greg, I think you were going through some of this stuff too, weren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay. So,
Dave, back up, will you?
sure.
What do you mean by sourcing notes? Either way, you have to find the note, and doesn't that qualify as sourcing the note?
Well, if I can buy a note at 50 cents and selling it at 90, that requires a certain skill set of networking, right?
Okay.
So, I mean, yes, you can buy from me, you can buy from Russ, you can buy from anybody else, you're correct. But would you rather buy at 90 or 95 cents or at 60 cents?
60 cents. So what's your point?
My point is, an active investor gets them at a better price. So it's like, I'm buying them by the case, and I'm selling them by the bottle. If you buy a case, you can get it cheaper than buying a bottle. So I'm buying them in bulk and piecing them out, and therefore I'm getting them at a better price. And that's just the difference between an active investor and passive. Now, can a passive investor find them by the case? Yeah, they can go to these events and network and find people to buy them from. Did I answer that or not, John?
Yeah, so that's sourcing the note.
Correct.
Well, sourcing, that means finding a note you can buy, correct?
That is correct, yeah.
So no matter what, you have to find the note.
Agreed, great. Or to your point, I'm gonna do some mailings to folks that have created seller finance notes in and around the country here. That's just going out in a week. So I'm sourcing it. And I'll either be brokering those to whoever or to an institutional buyer or whatever, but I'm sourcing it via the mail,
Okay.
okay? Or when you're dead, do you guys do mail still or not? You totally out of that game, okay. But you did.
He did,
Yeah, but that was sourcing the product, but it's expensive because of the marketing. Yeah, okay. So passive income has a rhythm and it's consistent. The notes that you bought, John, you can pretty much count on that. Would you agree? Okay.
Or clipping coupons, as I call it.
Right, agreed.
You
Yeah.
just get a certain amount every month as a coupon
Yep.
on a bond or something.
Yep. Or, so therefore your income is consistent. Or do you have yield drag? And yield drag is where I was talking about where it's an economic thing. You got a bunch of money and it's just sitting there. You're not making any money. The yield is not there, the return on the investment is not there. If you're lucky, if it's a savings account, you're getting what, 0.5%? And now, what are you getting at, what would somebody get at Wells now, just the money is sitting there?
I don't even usually count on anything.
Right, right. So that's yield drag. So when you sell your KC properties, if you don't reinvest it, you're not getting a return. And that's yield drag. Okay. So therefore, cash is not king, cash flow is right now. So how much yield, in terms of notes, what are your expectations? If you're a passive investor, this is the area where you are in the 6 to 9, maybe 10%. If you're active, 11 to 15 or more, depending. The family office that I'm working with to buy their notes, they've got a lot now. They're getting a 27% yield because they bought them so cheap. Just like with Empire, when you bought you had a really strong yield with the market push.
Yep, we do.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
So-
back to your analogy, your family office is probably buying truckloads, where your example of buying a case and selling one.
That is correct.
They are buying bulk.
And they've owned for a while.
And where are they buying them from?
At that time, they were buying pools from Fannie and Freddie, 100, 200, 300 at a time. Or as an REO guy here, I would lose assets because they would include some assets here and sell them in a pool. And then they'd go ahead and put owner occupied in there, hold them for a while, get the return with the intent of selling them off. And then to that point in that, their investor base said, okay, we're gonna loan you money or invest with you for 5 years. At the end of 5 years, we want out. So that's where this other group came on that I'm working with, in that it's the investors want out and the fund manager says, okay, we gotta dump these. And you take advantage of that, okay? But that's pretty much where the yields break down in this particular marketplace. So over here, again, the yield, it depends on the circumstances. But like I was mentioning about that other investor with his girlfriend, don't get drunk on yield. Because you know what, on yield, you don't know what it is until it finally cashes out. You don't know what, you can project all you want, but you don't know until it cashes out. It's not there.
The only good loan is a paid loan.
Right, right. The only good sale is a closed sale. And when I was in Maine brokering, there was a duplex, and the people had it sold. And at that time, you would bring in a check. Well, the buyer decided, I don't want to buy this. In the meantime, the property was deeded to them. It took them 2 years to sort it out. Nobody knew who owned the property.
The property was what?
I'm sorry?
Deeded to them.
It was deeded to them.
Oh.
It was
Before the
transferred.
cash changed hands, they deeded the property?
I'm sorry?
Before the cash changed hands, they actually transferred the deed?
The title company did, yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but it took 2 years to sort that out. Nobody knew, nobody could claim ownership. But again, it doesn't matter until the check cashes. And again, that was before you had the internet and all the other ways that you could track it. But it is what it is. So let's look at this. So let's say you have an investment at 12%, or you want to get 12%, and it's $500,000 and you want to have it out for 12 months. So, but what if it's only deployed 5 months, it sits dormant for 4, and then you got a deal for 10% for 3. What's your return? $43,000. Now, if you plug in the yield drag, the same investment, you put in at 8%, $500,000, figuring a 12-month period, it's out for 12 months, and your return is 45 grand, which is better. If you focus on the 12, you don't know. You can say something, Rick? No, okay. So yield is not, so Tom, at the paper source, Tom Henderson is a guy that's older than me. He always speaks. Do you know Tom?
No.
No? Okay. He said this several times at a meeting a few years ago. Yield is not realized until the note is paid off. Same thing we're just talking about. So the other thing in terms of where your money is or what you want to do, are you going to invest tax deferred or tax free with your different IRAs? That's a great place to start. And maybe because it's tax free, you don't have to focus on getting your 12 or 15%. You can settle for the 9 or 10 because there is no tax. Were any of you here when Quest spoke? I'd highly recommend them. If you don't have an IRA, I'd recommend that you get set up with them. So this you may or may not have seen. When you're buying a note, there's 6 primary areas that you're going to focus on. It's just putting together a puzzle and then you fill in the middle. You look at the payer, the most important piece. What's the propensity of that particular guy or gal to continue paying? That is so key, the pay history and everything else. You look at the collateral. Collateral is the house, the property, the subdivision. I'm sorry, can you see?
I can see.
Okay, all right. Just what is that? So there was a guy, Larry Pugh. He lives here, and he has a home in Big Springs, Texas. And he called me the other day. I had bid on a note that he had 3 years ago, and the numbers just didn't work. The the credit report, the credit score of the payer was really soft. The debt to equity was really soft, or in this case, I'm sorry, investment to value was really soft. Loan to value would have been soft. We passed on the note. It just didn't work. So now, 3 years later, he calls me a week ago, he says, I want to sell that note. Okay, so we looked at it. He said, oh, by the way, the payer doesn't pay to the last day of the month. So if you look at the paperwork, he's typically 15 days late. But in the note business, you look at the first 30. If they pay in the 30, you're okay. But that means that they're on the edge. And then if you look at the house, the collateral, there's a lot of deferred maintenance. So there's a reason why investors, in a good market, the proper way, is you look at maybe 70% of after repair value less repairs. The numbers don't work, because if that note went south, a note investor's toast, right? Okay. So, just an example. Equity, he had good equity. The terms, I think they're at 8%, that's okay. Pay history, like I said, was weak. Oh, by the way, 3 years ago, because he liked these people so well, he said for Christmas, he just forgave them for the December payment. So there's no pay history for that. So are you gonna buy that note? No. Now, the paperwork, and we just talked about that, like with a contract for deed, changing it over, you can always fix that. That's not a problem. If there's a missing note, you can do a lost note affidavit. You can take care of all that. So if you look at notes and that whole thing, you got the buyer, the collateral, and these are the same areas. But look at it from another way. You look at redeeming factors. So if something is soft, something else might be good. If the pay history may be great, maybe the investment to value might be a little bit higher. Maybe that's an appreciating area. You look at the variables, because one will compensate for the other. The paperwork's bad, that sucks. Well, you can fix that. So, in this whole arena, this is an imperfect scenario. Buying seller finance notes are imperfect. Would you agree, Kai? Now, is there anything else in your life that you seem to be imperfect that we were talking about?
Whoa. That's a personal question.
I mean the land deal.
Yeah, I'm not doing that anymore.
Okay, can I give a quick summary? So what if you work on a deal for how long?
6 months.
And, excuse me, and you put your heart and your soul into it as an agent, right? Okay? And you get a push-pull, right? And there's a lot of drama.
Mm-hmm.
And then it falls apart. And what do you got?
Crash burn and the heart.
And how,
Yeah.
and how much were you making an hour?
Oh.
Yeah, right.
But that's an imperfect situation. So the goal is to make sure that you can work through that and get a return and not have that. Go ahead.
Do you factor in the cost of, after you buy the note, say, you bought it for $25,000, and you factor in $3,000 for collections, attorneys, servicing? Do you factor in that when you buy these notes?
You mean on the back end or on the front end?
When the front end, when you buy them, I mean, you figure you're gonna have attorney fees, collections, servicing.
Okay, the notes that I'm buying,
That's non-performing.
non-performing.
Yeah,
Yeah, you
but-
have to. You absolutely have to.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
Okay.
Now, here's another side light. Let's say that you have a note in Michigan and it stops paying. Did you know that if you go to foreclose and then the payer comes around and says, we're ready to go, and you might have $3,000 in those attorney fees, the most you can collect is $75
What?
by statute?
Wow. Mm.
Yep. They box you in. So, but we do buy imperfect notes, but to that point, you've got to factor in that equity spread and everything else and the return to make it worth your while. Or in Milwaukee, if you're looking at a non-performing, if the tenant or the payer has not paid their water bills, guess who's going to be responsible for that? You are. It's put in with the back taxes.
Mm.
So it's just part of the drill. So if you look at it again, I'm just going to run these. This is what you're looking for right here. You want to look at, make sure that payer's good. You want to look at the rate and term. Now let me give you this example. Would you rather buy a note that has a 10% yield or 10% coupon rate or face rate, and it was fresh, or would you rather buy, or would you feel comfortable with buying a note that had maybe a 5% rate It's been seasoned for 10 or 12 years, knowing that notes pay off early, and you can get them both at a discount. Which would you buy? You might be better off buying the one at the lower coupon rate, because if it cashes out early, you're gonna do a lot better. Because your yield will go up. Did I lose anybody on that? Good, okay, all right. So again, secondary market as a passive investor is at 6 to 9%, assuming that all these things are equal and they're well done. So due diligence, I think you can read these as well as I can. But you're looking at property taxes, you're looking at the title. A big killer is blighted property. So if you look at comps, you could have a house on the north side of Guadalupe is in a comp area, and it's great. On the south side, there's another one, it's a POS. But that could kill you. If the street has a lot of board ups, which not too many have anymore, at least around here, that will kill you. But taxes, title, and blighted property evaluation will kill you if something goes wrong. Then you can look at the demographics, the vacant property codes, code violations, utility liens, I'm gonna talk about that one, and then as you had mentioned about the foreclosure costs and things like that. But these are all things that you're looking at for the due diligence, and they can add up. So if you look at valuations, and I may have shown this a couple of months ago, if you're buying dirt, your investment to value should be no more than 50%. That's it. Land fluctuates dramatically. Yeah, how much did land fluctuate 12 years ago?
Couldn't even give it away in some cases.
Right. I bought some dirt in Buckeye Ranchos to build on. I think I paid $8,000 or $9,000 an acre. It jumped up to $75,000 in 3 years. And it crashed to 5.
Did you sell it 75?
I resold it.
5.
Yeah, I wish I should have, but I was one of those piglets going to the slaughter, because I wanted to build on it.
Because why?
I'm sorry? Because I was building at that time, and it was,
Oh.
I was developing a small community in there. I had, I think 12 lots, and I built on 8, and I was gonna build some higher priced product in there. And I thought, no, I'm just gonna keep it. Well, I should have sold it. So then, after the crash, it came back up to 10 or 12, and I just got out of it. I'm done. I didn't want to deal with it. So with land being with so fluctuating, you never want to pay any more than 50% investment to value. If you look at a mobile home, on its own dirt, never any more than 50 to 60% of value. And if it was built before 78, there's no value.
Yeah.
Jumbo loans, in our realm, paying no more than 60 to 75% loan to value. And again, that's because, what about the repairs if it goes south? How do you protect yourself? But these, because things change. It's just, it is what it is. So, but there's always mitigating circumstances in all this scenario. You don't know. So you have to weigh it one way or another. And the property might look great, but the payer could just be really soft. So you have to look at the variables. So this is a really unique case study. I wish Renee was still here because he was familiar with it. Look at the numbers here. Investment to value was 17%. Loan to value was 13%. Really strong.
Wow.
Great interest rate. Great interest rate. And it was a very, very, the current balance was $20,000 on a $90,000 property, really? And the seasoning, 92%, 92 months rather.
Wow.
But you know what? I pulled title. And what did I find? They said, oh, there's these sewer liens going back to 2012. And they were sold. In Georgia, they can sell a sewer lien just like a tax lien.
Wow.
And then, so I couldn't get any clear picture. Do I really want to take a chance on this? So I passed.
Bless you.
But and then to find out anything about those liens, I had to send, I think, $50 to people that bought the liens, because that's what they do for business, just to have them tell me what it was or what it wasn't.
Quick question, Dave.
Yeah.
So if somebody bought those liens like a tax lien, what power do they have in terms of ownership?
Power to foreclose.
Right? Okay.
Just like a tax
Wow.
action.
Wow.
Same thing.
So if that ever goes south, if you bought the note and it ever went south, they have just as much power as you do.
But I couldn't even prove who owned it, because the record was so poor. What happened to the sewer lien? Did they foreclose? There was, title didn't help me.
Wow.
So it wasn't a lot of money, and I was really enamored because of this here. I thought, no, I can't do it. So then I went to the seller. I was at their office a couple days ago, and I said, by the way, whatever happened to that? Somebody bought it. I couldn't
Took
verify
a
it.
chance. Wow.
How much was the lien, do you remember?
Wasn't much. It's $1,500, and I don't care about that. I would have paid that.
Well, so at some point, if someone comes forward and says, I want my money, then you could have just paid, whoever the
Right.
buyer says, well, I'll just
But
pay it if it comes up.
We couldn't tell if it was redeemed or not.
Right?
That was it. So who really owned the property? You couldn't get clear title. But Atlanta, buying this and reselling it, it would have been easy. Or just keeping it, because the return, I was gonna do a partial on it, actually.
Dave, another question,
Yeah.
sorry. So the title company, does the title company in that situation have an option to insure around it, insure through it? They were just as lost, obviously, as anybody else was.
They were totally lost.
So they're frozen, they can't
Right.
do anything.
And my challenge was, when you put in an indicative offer on a spreadsheet of notes, you have a window of time to perform. And I didn't want to, I've got a good reputation of closing. And I don't want to get blemished.
Sure.
So I'd rather just walk away and not worry about it. An example, there's a note buyer out of San Diego. And I'm selling some reperforming notes now, and the yields are, you'll see a couple of them here. The yields are really good, 15%, 16%. And they said, well, we're gonna get 3 of them, okay? We're gonna get 2 of them, okay? And then one of their investors fell out. So they've closed on one, they're not gonna close on the other. Do you think I'm gonna deal with them in the future? Not a prayer. Because if in this business, if you make a commitment, you don't follow through, you're blackballed.
Right.
I'm not gonna go there.
Wow.
It's just the way it is. So this brings us to you, Russ. You know Russ O'Donnell. He's with Call the Underwriter. So Russ, you were introduced to me by Garnett, I believe,
Yeah.
and a few other folks.
About a year and a half ago.
Yep, something like that. So Russ works in the seller finance arena as a loan originator, Dodd-Frank friendly, whatever, right?
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, okay. And right now, we're working on transforming the contract for deeds to mortgages and deed of trust, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So I asked Russ to speak and share what that process is, what the cost is, cost benefit, why do it, whatever. So go for it.
All right. Thanks.
You're fine. You're fine.
Get the
You're
widescreen
good.
on?
I got your best side.
I'm
Don't
getting as old
worry.
as Dave.
Okay. You brat.
Well, thanks. It's certainly great to be here. Thanks, Dave, for having me. I don't know. A lot of us have. I shouldn't say a lot of us. Some of us worked together, working with Alden and his father on a few deals, and sure love this business, right?
Right.
Nobody wants to talk about compliance, right? And so I try to make it as I don't know if fun's really the real word, but I try to keep it light. You know, I don't like talking to attorneys any more than you do, and it seems like the hardest thing to do is make something so difficult, something fairly simple and easy. And so we try to do that. And so we know Dave and I talked recently about, and we've had a number of conversations with a number of investors across the country. They're running into this thing like Ohio and other states, which are really frowning heavy on contracts for deed, land contracts. Some people have pulled out of states completely. We actually just pulled out of New York. That info you sent me recently was just the cherry on top of a whole bunch of other stuff we've seen. There are just states that don't like what we do. You try to help
They just don't
somebody
like
out.
investors.
They just don't like
They're
investors.
so retail,
It's just
consumer oriented.
Yeah. It's unfortunate, but we have to be wise. And so anyway, we started talking about upon request, we started looking at ways to convert contract for deeds over to mortgage notes. Can we do it quickly? Can we do it cleanly? Can we do it inexpensively? We know what attorneys charge, so we always try to come in well under that. We're not attorneys, by the way. I'm a licensed RMLO, been one for God knows how long, decade or so. a licensed underwriter, been one for a long time, and so we just try to come from a common sense approach to align with the CFPB on what needs to happen. And so a couple different ways that we approach a conversion. If you're doing a conversion from a contract for deed, a land contract, over to a mortgage note, and where applicable, a deed of trust. First of all, you don't need to use our doc set to do it. We do provide a doc set, it's optional. We do it for $249. That's the doc set, okay? We provide an entire doc set. It's the same doc set that your buyer would see if they went to title and were closing on a Fannie Mae loan.
You want to define your term doc set.
A set of documents.
Okay.
Thanks, Rodney. A set of closing documents.
So that would be the mortgage, the note.
Note, everything, servicing, transfer, release, all of it. Every 50 notarized pages, all of it. That stack that gets thicker every year, that one, that's the one. And we pull our doc sets, our set of closing documents, through Doc Magic. So we guarantee that compliance in all 50 states. And you don't have to use that doc set. You can use your own, you can have an attorney draw it up, no problem. So Russ, what part would you play then if we didn't use your doc set, okay? If you have a note that was never made Dodd-Frank compliant in terms of ability to repay, you've got an owner-occupied buyer in there, they've been making payments forever, it's performing well, but it was never really Dodd-Frank compliant. Who knows, it's getting a little more difficult to sell notes that aren't Dodd-Frank compliant, right? So what we did is we did our research and we came up with a way that an investor can take an existing performing note that they want to convert over to a contract or just make Dodd-Frank compliant over to a mortgage note from an existing contract for deed. And we created an automated system to do that. You need basically 5 pieces of documentation to do it. It's real simple. I'll email you the PDF that we have and the documents that you need. It's real easy. Pay stub from the buyer. You need your 12-month most recent good pay history showing no 30-day late payments. There's a couple of other documents. You need to know the square footage of the home. You need to know how many people are living there. And all that factors into a thing called residual income. And again, I don't want any eyes to start glazing over when I start talking about underwriting. But what we're looking at, what the CFPB looks at, the biggest part of the ability to repay requirement in protecting the investor, right? As underwriters, my job is always first to protect my investor, is residual income. If the buyer meets a residual income requirement through underwriting, the buyer, this is per the CFPB, the buyer can never come back.
Your CFPB?
CFPB, you don't know what the CFPB is?
They might not.
Consumer Financial Protection Bureau.
Okay.
They're the ones. Thanks, Rodney. So the CFPB is who comes in with no accountability from anybody and says, Wells Fargo, we don't like what you did. We're going to fine you $7 billion, and which to Wells Fargo is the cost of doing business, right? And you don't get to appeal it. There's no governing board. There's no court you can take that to. They're untethered. They do what they want.
Didn't it get more or less castrated when he quit the original one?
Who did?
The guy that ran it.
With Cordray. And now Mulvaney.
When Mulvaney walked in, and then now I always forget her name. I hate being 52. I can never remember her name. The new one that they appointed, the permanent director of the CFPB. Anyway, no. The answer is no. There was supposed to be a big rollback. You're talking about that big. No,
Never happened.
never happened. The only thing that came in and happened is they made some adjustments to payday loans. But in terms of ability to repay mortgage loans, there were absolutely no changes whatsoever.
And even with the fly-in, nothing changed.
Nothing. Zero. Nothing. There were supposed to be some adjustments for small creditors, such as yourselves, right? In terms of how many you can do without an RMLO, and you can maybe sidestep the underwriting requirements. What that was really really geared towards was small banks and credit unions in small towns doing business loans for farmers and other business owners. It had nothing to do with owner-occupied buyers, and so nothing's ever changed. But I don't want to go down a trail where I'll forget where I was. So in reeling that back in, good question by the way, is we want to try and make it as simple as possible to comply with the ability to repay, because what it does, a Dodd-Frank compliant note does three things, right? Protects the asset. The buyer passes a residual income test, which is done very easily in an existing note that has a good pay history. Okay, you protect the asset, meaning the buyer can never come back with a smart attorney and say, you didn't make sure I could afford it, because that's our responsibility, right? No accountability on the buyer.
Right.
You didn't make sure I could afford it, so I'm going to invalidate your lien. Can't do that if they pass a residual income test, okay? So it protects the asset. A Dodd-Frank compliant note reduces default, because the buyer can afford to make the payment. Well, Russ, come on, the buyer's been making payments for 92 months. How do I know that there's no way they're going to default later? It's very unlikely, right? Okay, well, but if we never approve the buyer's income to make the payment, how do we know it's not a sister living there who's going to move out in 6 months? Or how do we know it's not Uncle Ted who might die in 6 months, right? We don't know where the money's coming from, right? So to get that loan compliant, right, we need a few things, and we can do it easily on an existing note, right? So we protect the asset, we reduce default, and then number 3, we add value because the note's now Dodd-Frank compliant. We open the door to a lot more buyers when it's Dodd-Frank compliant. So as we roll this out, our scheduled rollout date is going to be the 15th of this month. We're working on it now. Our web guys are going crazy. And so when this rolls out, you'll be able to take the buyer's pay stub, the pay history, the square footage, how many dependents, right? You can plug this all into our online compliance calculator and spit out a fail or a pass. And if they have a pass, you can buy a certificate for $99, and you'll be Dodd-Frank compliant on that existing note. If it's a fail, a couple things you can do. You can make sure you entered it right. Give us a call, make sure you entered it right. And number 2, there might just be maybe there's some adjustments. Maybe we need to lower our rate a little bit, or extend our term, lower the payment, just depending on how much you miss it by. We just have to verify a few things, but if they're making the payments, they've been making them on time, chances are you're probably going to be okay getting that certificate. But that's the benefit to doing that. And again, when you're doing that conversion, that's a separate thing that we do to just simply add value and create those benefits to your docs.
So let's do a promotion.
Yeah.
You're working with these people right here.
Okay.
Mary.
Oh, is this Mary? Oh, okay.
Yeah. So in this particular, it was originated just after Dodd-Frank came about.
Mm-hmm.
There was nothing in the file about that.
Correct.
But the payments were good and everything. The backup file, because I asked you about it at the time, said you'll probably be okay, don't worry about it. Okay. So this is in Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
But we're changing it over from a contract for deed to a mortgage.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
When that's done, there's a higher quality note here.
Absolutely.
Because you validated the ability for that payer to keep paying.
Correct.
And this particular payer has their own insurance policy.
Oh, wow.
So that's even better.
Yeah, right.
But because it's in Ohio, it's okay. It's just going to be a mortgage and a note. It's outside that box and it's good to go.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So with these people, you're just going to put them into your system,
Yep.
and we roll it out and we're done.
That's it. That's it. Yeah, and I love what Dave brings up. It's because it's before Dodd-Frank, so you're grandfathered, right?
Well, this is right at that time frame.
Yeah, yeah.
It's close enough.
Exactly, right. So you have one that goes back that far, right? Well, I don't need to be Dodd-Frank compliant. You don't need to be Dodd-Frank compliant. You don't have to go through all of that, but gosh, why not? Why not? I mean, if it adds value, right, you now know for sure they can actually continue to make the payments. You know what I mean? It just kind of makes sense. But in this case, yeah, all this gal has to do is she's going to get us we're going to run. We got a trial one since the website's not out yet, right? So we're kind of doing these. We're doing these by hand, little by little.
So this is beta
as we can do it. It's kind of beta testing, yeah. So we're doing a couple for Dave, and so all we do is we go into our back office calculator that hasn't rolled out yet, and we plug in the numbers from that simple documentation, and we create a Dodd-Frank compliant note that's never really been Dodd-Frank compliant. And again, on this one didn't need to be, but we get asked, that's one of our biggest questions, outside of how long does this take and how much does it cost. The third largest question is I've had this note for 5 years. I've had this note for 4 years. I didn't even know I had to be Dodd-Frank compliant, right? We hear that a lot. And so I'm just learning that I've got to be compliant. is it possible to wind back the clock, right? Well, realistically, no, you can't, because you'd have to use income documents from that time, and they're kind of expired, right? But if the last 12-month pay history, there's been no 30-day late payments on the last 12-month pay history, and you've been servicing the note because it's your note, right? And you can provide that, then all we have to do is bring in a buyer's current pay stub, answer a few questions, plug it through, and make sure there's enough income there to meet the ability to repay requirement.
So
Dave,
that-
can you go back to that? It's a non-related question. It's a question of why would you spend the amount of money you spent on that last deal?
They bought it at 60%.
Oh, okay, because I'm looking at it, it's like 95%, and I go,
That's
what?
retail.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. What's, okay, you answered the question.
But I'm creating
Right.
a higher quality note.
Right.
So for a passive investor, the numbers work really well.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my rationale.
Right.
So instead of selling some of these at a heavier discount,
Sure.
I don't have to.
Right.
You
It
can
doesn't
just
cost that
increase
much.
the
Go ahead,
value.
Greg.
What's been the borrower's feedback?
You mean we can own the house? Yeah, and the first letter I sent them, I said there's no cost, and then I had to backtrack. I said, well, because of federal stuff, we have to charge you $99. Okay, no big deal. Oh, and there might be a title report, it's another 25, or a credit report, that's another $25. Okay, we can do that. We'd pay more if we had to. We want to own our house. And this has been in two separate situations.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, the calculator, we don't use it to justify compliance just yet. We got to do a little more coding, which I don't even know what that means. And just my web engineers, he's working pretty hard to get that done. But what we do, the calculator is currently on our website, and it's really just a tool now to allow you as an investor, say you've got a buyer that you want to go in and just see if it's worth really messing with, right? So we have a lot of investors that go there, that just find our website and get a little notification that says they were there, and I'll reach out and say, hey, did you get what you needed? And they go, yeah, we think this is really handy. We just thought we'd check in and see if the buyer was close to making it. We were concerned about income, and now that we've done this, we think we're gonna go ahead and proceed. So then they later send in the full review. So it's handy, we can use it, we just haven't rolled out officially for this purpose. Yeah.
And then go ahead.
Got two questions over here. Whichever one.
Well, I was just wondering, usually when you do these contract for deeds or sales agreements, wherever, the whole point of it is the people usually can't qualify under normal financing options. So I guess I'm curious, are these people that you kind of said, okay, well, we think they can qualify now under a normal mortgage situation?
Well, the way because of the contract for deed before, the reason you do them is because you get the people out really easy if they defaulted.
Right.
But the laws are changing now, so it doesn't matter. So that if you have a contract for deed, if you have it foreclosed, depending upon the state, it's gonna take almost the same amount of time. So it's like you might as well just go to the note or mortgage.
But you're giving up legal title, giving it to them.
That's okay, you're a lender. And actually it's better because then you are not on title. If there's a code violation, it goes to the homeowner. If there's a water bill, it goes to the homeowner. You're the lender. So you're out of that box.
I mean, that's one of the issues when you were talking about Milwaukee.
Right.
And you're gonna get, since you're on the title.
You
even
get
though
old junk.
Even though you've got a contract for deed with a borrower, if something happens to that borrower, that municipality is gonna still come back to you for whatever that deficiency was that was not paid.
That's correct. So this gets you out of that box. I mean, there was a note that I had in St. Louis. Strong pay, really strong pay, not yours, Joe. Actually, on yours. On yours, that sewer issue, if that was is Missouri deed of trust or?
I don't remember.
Okay, so let's say it's a deed of trust in Missouri. If it was that, you wouldn't hear anything. They just have to pay you. There wouldn't be anything on sewer liens or anything like that. Remember there was what, a $3,500 lien that popped up?
300.
It'd be on them. You don't have to worry about it. It's so much better.
Couple more on this side. I'm sorry, this gentleman was
Joe, you were
first.
first, I think.
Okay, I've got a question. I'm considering making a reverse mortgage to a relative. Is that Dodd-Frank?
Wow.
relevant
Great
since there are
question.
no
So,
payments?
that's awesome. That's a great question. Reverse mortgages are exempt
They are
from
exempt.
Dodd-Frank because you're not making a mortgage payment.
Right.
You know, you're paying taxes and insurance. So it's a reverse mortgage is a HUD-insured loan, okay, by normal standards. If you called AIG, the biggest producer of reverse mortgages, and you wanted a reverse mortgage, they're gonna put it through HUD standards, but they're only gonna make sure that you have the ability to make the tax
This
and
would be a
insurance
private,
payments. Yeah.
private reverse mortgage.
Yeah, yeah,
Fine.
yeah, so you're exempt, there's no mortgage payment.
Okay.
There's nothing to, yeah, right.
Thanks.
You got it, great question, great question.
So can you force a note that's under contract with deed to go to a mortgage or something? Does it require?
You can't force them.
Can't do it? It's only if it's voluntary.
Well, you go to them and you can always incentivize it.
Okay.
Well, the other thing is, when you're transitioning out, typically in these contract for deeds, they require that there be insurance, but that it not be escrow. You can change that little term. The only thing is, instead of you paying for the insurance yourself, we're gonna do the escrows on it, so it makes it a stronger note too.
What about like on that motor VR note where if the contract for deed says that, or we can convert to a mortgage and a note.
You can do that.
But if they don't wanna do it, can you still force it at that point?
No,
Because it's written in
but
there.
I'll tell you, they won't do it.
Okay.
I hasn't.
But even though it's written in the contract, if they say no,
Then you can't.
despite the fact that they haven't agreed to it when they wrote the original contract for deed. No, no.
I don't know what the paperwork says, I don't remember what.
But it's written in the contract for deed that they agreed to it, that if the purchaser, or if we wanted to convert it, they've already agreed to it in writing.
Then you just do it.
So you don't have to, at that point, they can't push back.
No.
Okay.
You're good to go. And then I would go to them and let the payer pay the $125 or whatever. You do whatever. And you can use Fannie Mae docs, they're online. The mortgages are due to trust, even the note. And it's 1-to-4 family addendum or rider for the rents. It's all there. And because we've done stuff, I've got that package done anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. I have a question for you and the group. Does anybody get pushback when you try to convert those?
I haven't done it yet, so
That's a new space. Not
It's
too
a
many.
new space.
It's a new space,
Okay.
yeah. But just because of what's going
What's
on.
going on, yeah, sure, yeah.
It's so it.
I just
but-
thought they might push back, because what you said, what's going on with the changes in Ohio, that they might say, the court might find that, no, you can't enforce that part of that.
Well, that would be him, but you're still the underwriter.
Right.
You're still giving the loan when it's ultimately said and done, right? I mean, yes, you're doing your job,
Yeah.
but we can we override you?
You're still the lender.
Yeah.
So I get that question sometimes, and my question back to you is, well, do you want to be Dodd-Frank compliant or do you want to be you compliant? I'm going to underwrite the Dodd-Frank.
I guess it depends.
It just depends, yeah. I mean, if I do it, I can give you a certificate. If I don't do it, I can't give you a certificate. So you can always decide after what we find, if we say it's not Dodd-Frank compliant unless you do X, X, and X, if you want to make the loan anyway, that's on you. I don't. I'm just here to let you know whether you are or you aren't, and certify it if it is. That's all we do. Yeah. Ultimately, you're the lender. You do what you want.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Right.
Dave, how about that partial note from Marlene? Who does that, you or me?
That already is, it's a deed of trust.
Oh, okay, all right.
So you're all good.
Okay.
And that was written before Dodd-Frank, I think, too, if I'm
Yeah.
not mistaken. So you're outside that box.
What is the cutoff line for Dodd-Frank? I forgot.
January 14th of 2014. January 10th of 2014.
14 is when they actually began
Right.
to enforce it.
Yeah.
But it was passed in 2010, but for what we're talking about, it was a January 10th date of 14. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think that, I don't think TRID, for big banks and mortgage companies, we didn't have, underwriting didn't have to start really underwriting to it until October. I think it was October 1. That's why that July 1
Right.
deal, it'd probably be an easy conversation.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I wasn't concerned about
Yeah,
it.
true, it became effective, but nobody, as you can well imagine, even big banks and mortgage companies and all their lawyers still had no idea what to underwrite to. It hadn't been clarified. In fact, what we use to certify for ability to repay, the CFPB who enforces Dodd-Frank didn't roll out their initial interpretation until March of 2014, and then they amended it. We used the latest amendment is I think March of 2016, which is on our website, by the way. It's free. You
That's a
can go
big
there
aha
and-
for me. That's a window of opportunity for negotiation.
Big time.
It is.
Big time, it is, yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
So they can, just,
Any questions, just, you know how to get a hold of us, give us a shout, and then we can shoot you any information on the conversion stuff or the online stuff, and we'll make an announcement when we roll it out, for sure.
okay, thanks.
Cool, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Russ.
Now, when you look at all this due diligence and things that we've talked about, don't overanalyze. Don't put too many filters on it. Because if you do too much of that, there's a guy in New York. He's been pinging me back and forth and doing whatever. He hasn't bought a thing. He overanalyzes. It's like, really, dude? He'll never buy anything. He's got a couple $100,000 sitting there. He's just afraid to jump in. You've worked with buyers like that, and I know that I'm sure you've worked with buyers on your stuff when you were getting rid of it. They're just afraid to jump over the edge. So, but you can't eliminate all the risk. So, but with the due diligence, all you're doing is creating blockers. So if something happens, you've got things in place, you know what's going to go on, you can cover yourself so you can get out of it whole. And again, the same phrase about the yield. And I like this from Harvey McKay. You know, knowledge is not power unless you utilize it. So this is, now if you're looking for, this is a commercial. So this is a reperforming note. It's seasoned. Yes, it's in Ohio. The people are paying. This is a prime candidate to change over. I don't own this. The numbers are good. The yield is good on this. It's a strong paying note. 71 months. I think the seasoning after the reperforming is well over 12 to 14 months. So it's a good buy.
What's the price on this one?
14.
Okay, but the principal balance is 17?
Yeah.
So whatever 14 out of 17 is.
Yeah, that's a pretty good discount. And the interest rate is 9.5. So when you put that together, you're probably about even with the servicing, probably at maybe 10.5 or 11. I don't know. I'm guessing. You can play with it. But it's got a good investment to value, good loan to value, and again the seasoning. And there's only 47 payments remaining, so it's a short payout. And the guy that owns this is a SWAT commander for the LAPD.
I guess it's what, 78% loan to value?
No.
I'm looking at 14 over 17 principal balance.
No, you're looking at the where's the value here? Principal balance is 17,786, and where's the value? Do I have it on here?
Right there.
Right there.
35. So
Okay,
35.
okay.
So 17 divided by 35.
Okay, but my contention is the sales price versus the principal balance. In other words, it's
So the sales price.
i.e. 14 grand over 17 something.
No, 14 over 24 is investment to value.
Okay, I understand. I
So-
understand.
so
24 is your original loan.
You're just looking at the
Don't pay
discount.
for it.
I'm looking at saying the guy can come up tomorrow and say, here's 17.8, the note's paid.
Right, and you're
Yeah.
making a quick,
On 14, yeah.
Yep,
And that's like 78%.
right,
Okay.
yep. Yep. And this one we were looking at that's being rewritten. And this is the third one. It's in Columbus. It's a duplex. We're changing it over to value is 65, 79 payments remaining, $300 P&I. Again, it's safe at 27%, 30% on investment value and loan to value. And they've been in there for 95 months. I had a conversation with this lady here, and what's underneath that? There it is. It's an owner-occupied duplex. It's 3 blocks from the area around OSU, Ohio State University, that's getting gentrified. So it's a strong rental area. Again, it's a strong note. It's at what, 18,465, based upon a current balance of 19,437. But this is going to be a mortgaging note too. We're transitioning that out. What are your numbers?
I'm looking, I'm looking at saying, this number here, the 18 up here over the 19, saying, okay, a guy could buy it out, as soon as you write it, he could all of a sudden
Yep.
buy you out for 19 something, and I've already,
Be quick, yeah, that's
and
possible.
it'd be like, I would say, why would I waste my
But
time on it?
What are the
But-
odds
Yeah.
in this scenario? Because these folks don't
Yeah.
have a lot of money.
Right.
They're just happy to be in the
Sure.
house. And so this is a duplex, the other half isn't rented.
Right.
They just live it. So it's all a matter of balance, risk reward, what works for you, what doesn't work for you. There's more product in the note vault. And then this is, so I like, again, as you can tell, I like this slide. You stay above the clouds, and then the topic of this whole meeting today was, what if you haven't done much in notes before? Are you ready to jump up to the next level and jump in? So to that point, come on. If you're newer to note investing and you want to get started, you want to engage, and you have the funds either passively or actively, we're looking at a number of pools right now. And to that point, I'm looking for folks who would want to partner. And what that means is, we buy the note, you buy the note with your funds. Whatever comes out of it, we split the back end. And you get the mentoring along with it. And so if you look at some notes, you're probably looking at a gross profit of 10 grand, 5 grand each, and it's out there for 90 days on $20,000 bucks. That's a pretty good rate of return, annualized. It might be a good play for some of that debt capital just sitting there.
So you're looking for somebody to warehouse these loans until they are sold off to a retail investor?
As I'm working them through, taking care of this other stuff on here, that's correct.
What's
Or
your time frame
alternatively,
and how much money are you looking for?
the pool I'm looking at now, the typical loan is 23 to 25 grand in terms of acquisition. There'll be costs of recording, BPOs, title. BPOs are probably 100, titles 150. Other transitioning, maybe another $200 or $300. So, but the bottom line numbers, it's pretty strong. And I'd rather just go over that, one-on-one instead of going over it in the meeting here. So if you're looking, if that works, you got some dead capital just sitting there, or if you're just looking for the retail side, you just want to dump it in your IRA, that's okay too. So that's pretty much what I have. The next meeting is September 4th here. If anybody that's interested, looking at this particular investing concept, invite them. And any other questions?
I got one that's totally not related, but for you people that are in the Phoenix area, when the Corporation Commission came in and said, we're not gonna turn off electricity, electricity appears to stay high, but I've had tenants that move out, and they stop paying, shall we say, and then there's a gap until it starts up again. Question is, like, when you mentioned that water deal, who ends up paying that, or is it absorbed in APS, or does it go against the landlord, or does anybody know anything about it, other than what it means is, when your tenant moves out, you don't have to call and say, okay guys, start it up, because I'm gonna have the landlord until I get the next tenant. It stays hot. But
Yeah, but I think it stays under the original tenants.
In Arizona, that's law.
well, yeah, but I mean, he quits paying.
It's still on him.
Well, I mean, he's
He
already
has to
called
notify
to
the client.
cancel, he's called to cancel it.
And if they didn't cancel it, that's.
Oh, let's say he's called and canceled it. He
Right.
said, I'm out, I'm gone, give me a final, they give him a final.
Yeah.
The question is, who continues to pay that
They turn it
gap?
off.
They turn it
No,
off.
no, it's not off.
Really?
It doesn't go off.
I was under the impression that it's only in matters of excessive heat warnings.
Yeah,
that they turn
it's
it
only
off.
good from the summertime. It ends October 1st.
I only thought it was the national.
But the question is,
emergency.
ultimately, who's got that bill? Because it isn't the tenant anymore, because he's canceled it.
Yeah.
And it's on.
Well, do you get a notification that your tenant has turned it off?
Now, you don't get a notification, you know the tenant's already turned it off, yeah, because you call and you find out. The reason I asked one time is I had a gap of about a week. And I thought, okay, the tenant's moved out, he's canceled it here. And I can't start it until here. But in the meantime, and during that week, it was hot. In other words, it stays hot.
The AC's running.
No, well, yeah, your electricity is hot.
Right.
It doesn't go off.
It just seems
But it's not
logical.
being paid for by the tenant, because he's got a final.
It's not your issue.
And then the question is, does it go?
It's
Will
not
they
your-
ultimately come back and bill the landlord or the
You
owner
didn't
or,
put- You didn't put your name.
or ABS?
This is not the Midwest.
Yeah,
That's the difference.
okay,
This is geared for capitalism.
yeah.
Well, my gut feel is APS is not gonna do anything for free. So once a tenant calls up and says, hey, shut it off on a certain date, APS should then be liable to call you and say, hey, your tenant is shutting
Oh,
off the power.
ABS
at
doesn't
such
do
a
that at
date."
all. They don't
Or
call you.
notify you in some way.
They don't call you, the power doesn't ever go off.
Yeah.
But the person paying it seems to go off.
Yeah, but either way, it seems if APS, if they notify you, then it's off of their shoulders and it's back on.
Right, but
You
they,
can call-
no,
you
they,
can-
won't- they never notify you.
You can come back next month and you can tell us what
Yeah,
happened.
I'm just saying if anybody knows the answer to the question of, because.
You're gonna know
Like you
next
said
month.
earlier, APS won't do it for free, so do they either absorb the cost or do they have a way to pass it off to the landlord or something or somebody, or, I don't know.
Well, I had a situation where it first moved out,
Right.
canceled their power as of July 31st.
Right.
New tenant moved in, and so the old tenant canceled the power. New person moved in. The guy showed up yesterday, disconnected the power. He said, well, you know, it's 5 days late, sorry. Didn't see the new reconnect, and so now the tenant's without power. It's all
Okay.
TEP's fault as far as I'm concerned. You didn't follow the instructions that you were given.
Okay, I'm just saying, in the case I've observed, it didn't go off. It wasn't disconnected.
Are you sure they actually called them?
I was told that because, you know, I was the one that, you know, had the next one cut in line and thought I was gonna have a gap.
I'd be calling APS myself and find out when they did shut it off.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, what if you're not, what if you're not using any, even though it's hot? What if you're not using it, you turn the AC off, you have nothing plugged in?
There's still a connection fee.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, APS, I would think, would have the answer to your question if you called them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but their answer would most probably be you're responsible.
Well,
And
he
then you
owns
say,
the
well-
owns the property, he's gonna pay for it.
Yeah,
It's a
ultimately.
cost to pay for
I
it.
got a
Right,
question.
Speculative.
So we've acquired about 9 notes on manufactured homes located in communities, and we're trying to, sell off the back ends right now because they've all been underwritten and things like that. Do I need a Reg D offering sheet in order to offer those up for sale?
Is it pool or individual?
No, just the
So
individual.
you're selling
note.
a tail?
No.
You're selling the first or the second?
The first lien position.
No, you're just selling a note.
So is it considered a securities instrument if you're selling that one to one investor, you're not pulling for that same note or anything
No different
like
than
that?
this.
Right, okay.
Yep.
Oh, last question, because it kind of goes hand in hand. I'm guessing you don't have to be an accredited investor
Nope.
in order to purchase that note, correct?
Nope, it's just paper,
Okay.
just paper. Anything else? Okay, thanks for coming, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.